Be teased of the drama no more. It's time to get into a breakup that could have been messier, but got a little messy yesterday. As y'all know, the official 53-man roster came out at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. Kendrick Bourne made it, to some surprises, but then we find out that he was potentially amongst trading rumors and then other things to later on request to be released or something of that matter. Doesn't matter because we brought in Jon Lyons to break down the Patriots drama with us here on Boston is End of the Chat. First and foremost, Jon, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on once again. Looking forward to diving into this Patriots roster.
Yes, we have enjoyed doing the football talk with you for the past few weeks. So, of course, I've got to come off the top rope here. What did you hear about this Kendrick Bourne drama and why it led to him, eventually no longer being on the roster as of yesterday?
Yeah, this whole situation to me, Casey, is really unfortunate because you go back to 2021, he had 800 yards receiving, looked like a big piece potentially of this offense, and then in 2022 finds himself in Matt Patricia and Joe Judge's doghouse, still not really sure why. 2023 gets injured last year, working his way back, but just wasn't quite there. And then I was there at training camp this year, and there were a couple moments where he looked good, but it never looked like he was better than, say, Stefon Diggs or Kayshon Boutte or any of those guys at the top of the depth chart. Then he gets hurt. Now he's released. I think the natural fit for him is San Francisco, and I think the Patriots, the reports, they tried to trade him to Minnesota. I wouldn't be surprised if they had conversations with San Francisco as well, but you look at just where his place on the roster would be, and again, great guy, had a good early impression in New England, but I just don't think there was much of a fit for him with this roster because Stefon Diggs is going to be ready for week 1. Kayshon Boutte's had a great camp. Demario Douglas plays, exclusively in the slot too. So I just don't know if there was really a fit at the top for him, and Matt Collins and Kyle Williams also earned spots. So again, I just don't think there was a great fit. I'm not surprised they weren't able to find a trading partner, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he's on San Francisco or Minnesota within, the next couple days or so.
Yeah, listen, I'm glad he's gone. I am. Not because I don't think he's a serviceable player, not because I think he's a bad dude, bad locker room guy, anything like that. I'm just tired of the years-long conversation, Jon, surrounding Kendrick Bourne going to be on the roster? You think Kendrick Bourne's going to be released? You going to ask for his release? Is he, is he going to ask out? Blah, 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 blah. What I want to know is, there was all the panic, obviously, off that initial 53-man roster. 8 wide receivers. 8 wide receivers made this team. And then, obviously, in the blink of an eye, it's down to 6 now. But I want to know about the next one. I want to know if the money freed up in getting rid of Kendrick Bourne increases the likelihood of the reunion that I've been clamoring for since before it was even a divorce, bringing back Jakobi Meyers.
Yeah, Jakobi Meyers, I think, would be a great fit to come back at him. And not just because he was good here in the past, but we're talking about a guy that had a career high in receptions and receiving yards last year, still only 28 years old, obviously been successful with Josh McDaniels in multiple places, New England and Vegas, at this point in his career. But also, I think a lot of people think of Jakobi Meyers as just a slot guy, and that hasn't been the case. The last 2 years, he's played the majority of his snaps on the outside. So he can play on the outside. He can play in the slot. He can essentially line up wherever Josh McDaniels or Mike Vrabel would want him to. And as I mentioned before, we've seen the production there. So I think it would be a great fit. And if you look at also just the type of receivers that they have, he would be kind of unique for them, and not just his versatility that I mentioned, but Demario Douglas is the smaller, shiftier type slot guy, whereas Meyers, if he lines up in the slot, he's a bigger guy, does a great job finding open holes and coverages, also is a really good blocker as well, and they can use him in different personnel groups in addition to that. So I think it would be a great fit to bring him back, because again, I know I mentioned Stefon Diggs earlier, and I know he's going to come back week 1, but there's no guarantee he's going to be fully ready to go the first month of the season. Maybe he takes some time to work his way back up to being at least that number 2 caliber receiver that a lot of people hope he can be. And Meyers would be there in the meantime. And also, too, he'd be insurance that even though Kayshon Boutte has had a great training camp, once the regular season comes, if he has some struggles, he'd be further insurance there. So I would love to have Jakobi Meyers back. I think it makes a lot of sense for several different reasons, and I hope the Patriots, go in that direction.
So with this Kendrick Bourne drama, It was reportedly that he requested to be released, but Vrabel said this was news to him. There are rats in the organization that Vrabel said that there are rats that he has to find, has to smoke out. Is this going to be a problem going forward for Vrabel? Will he take control of this? The rats that he is trying to find that are leaking information, like the Polk news, that he needs to take a hold of, and is he going to do that? And is this going to be an issue going forward?
Yeah, I think no coach is going to have the level of autonomy and control and power that Bill Belichick had for at least the second half of his career. But I also don't think you want things as wide open as they were last year under Gerard Mayo, where Matt Judon's having a temper tantrum on the practice field in front of everybody to Mayo. So I think you want something maybe in the middle of that, probably closer to the Belichick end of it. And I think that's what Vrabel wants. And I think what's happening is he's running into some forces that aren't fully allowing him to do that. Like you mentioned the Polk news and even the Bourne news. Maybe that came from someone in the building, but just as likely it could have come from an agent or a family member or a friend. And that's something that Mike Vrabel has no control over. And I'm sure he's probably pretty frustrated by that. But I think eventually he'll work his way to having a significant amount of control and power in that building. But I think early on, you might see, occasional leaks like this. And if you go back, and I know it was a long time ago, but if you go back to Bill Belichick's first couple of years or so, I'm sure there were more people talking to the media and things kind of being out there than, say, in 2015, 2016, 2017. So again, I think it's kind of a natural thing with a new coach, and there's some turnover in the roster as well. And a lot of these guys, too, like Kendrick Bourne, is not necessarily a Mike Vrabel guy. He was brought here under Bill Belichick and, of course, played here with Mayo. Same thing with Jalen Polk, right? He was brought here by Elliott Wolf and Gerard Mayo. So some of these guys, too, not Vrabel guys, not really a fit. Like if I was Kendrick Bourne, I'd probably want to be released, too. At best, he was going to be the seventh receiver and probably not play that much, as I alluded to before. Now he has a chance to sign somewhere and hopefully contribute. So I understand from Bourne's perspective why he would want to be released. I understand from Vrabel's perspective why he doesn't want anyone saying anything to the media at all. So I think you just saw a clash of it there. I do think Vrabel, though, to answer your question, over the course of the next several years, will get control of it. I just think you'll see a few bumps kind of early on.
Yeah, Vrabel will make sure that it happens. My thing is, I believe that Bourne just wanted a more solidified role where he knows he's going to get the reps that he wants, but then he also supposedly wanted a slight increase in money or a little bit more money to his name. But you can't ask for both when you're coming off of a prove-it season. That's for sure. Now, before we get to the new cutlet in town, I want to go over one more thing, for this wide receiving room, because, of course, as Adam alluded to earlier, 8 was just blowing all of our minds 48 hours ago. Now it cuts down to roughly about 6. You're looking at Diggs, Booty, Hollins, Douglas, Williams, Chisholm, and then Polk on IR saves them some of that room. But are we not giving enough love and discussion to Matt Collins and how he can kind of level up this wide receiving room? Because it was kind of talked about when all the shuffling was going around of what to make of this room. And a couple of reporters are saying this probably is one of the better wide receiving rooms New England has had in quite some time. Walk me through that. This is not my verbiage. I am repeating what has been said. So do we need to put more respect on the name of Matt Collins? Hollins.
Yeah, look, Casey, you say one of the better receiving rooms the Patriots have had in recent years. As we know, better doesn't equate to good, right? So, I mean, it'll be better than it was
Before
a year
anybody
ago.
goes crazy either. Let's just get that clear. This is not me saying this. Continue, John.
Right. We're talking about a team that was maybe the 31st receiver group last year. So if they can get to 23rd, like that, it's better, but it's still the 23rd receiving room in the league. Yeah. And when it comes to Matt Collins, look, he's 6'4", big-bodied guy. They don't have another player like that in their receiving room that at least has performed on a semi-consistent basis. I mean, he hasn't really ever broken out. He showed a little bit last year in Buffalo, especially in the playoffs. But I think he's a guy that if he's your fourth or fifth guy, you're kind of okay. If they're relying on him to win a bunch of games, I don't know if you really love the position they're in with that. So I think his best asset is the fact that he's 6'4", he's big, he's physical, and they just don't have another guy like that. Like Diggs is not a super big guy. Obviously, Douglas is small. Booty is not huge. I mean, he's bigger than someone like Douglas, but he's not huge. Kyle Williams is not a big guy either. So it's just a valuable guy to have. And this is a team that over the last 3 years has struggled a lot in the red zone. They've been near the but 2022 they're at the bottom of the league. Last year they were wildly inconsistent in the red zone, at the bottom of the league for most of the year. So if he can help with that, then I think it'll be a great asset for them to have. But I wouldn't expect him to have 50 or 60 catches and have this big contribution. I think, again, the best thing about him is his size, which is something they don't have. It'll help them in the red zone. It'll help them with contested catches. It'll help them, maybe in some short yardage-ish situations. But again, I still think their top 3 receivers are Diggs, Booty, and Douglas. And then it's Hollins, then it's Williams, then it's Chisholm. And then depending on if they keep Javon Baker around, if he can kind of carve out some sort of role, I don't really expect that. But again, I think Hollins, his ceiling to me is probably to be, maybe their 3rd, but probably their 4th guy.
So the reason that so many of us, one of the main reasons that a lot of us are, high on the Patriots going into this year, it's not that receiving core,
no?
obviously. No, it's
that
Drake.
better room,
Look, it is an improved room. It's a sad state of affairs, but it is an improved room.
Right.
No, it's Drake May, obviously, and hoping that Drake May has the ability to lift other guys up around him, which is why them going out, the Patriots, and getting Tommy DeVito, who, he was fun for a minute last
Adding
year
some
with
food
the
to the
Giants.
table.
Look, there are going to be North End jokes. There already are. There are going to be Providence jokes. There's the direct, link to Sean Stellato, who's a Salem native, obviously his agent, who you saw there in the fedora on the sidelines, constantly there in Jersey last year. It's a fun story, I guess, but it means nothing, John. Is he an improvement over Josh Dobbs? Maybe. But if this team loses at any stretch Drake May, they're doomed. They're doomed. So Drake May is ultimately going to be the straw that stirs the drink, or whatever bad analogy we want to use. If Tommy Cutlets here is seeing any meaningful time on the field for this team, it's an issue.
Are we in trouble?
Yeah, not are we. We are in trouble. So, break glass in case of emergency. So ultimately, is he even going to be on the roster halfway through the year? What does this mean now?
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. There's a pretty big gap between Drake May and their backup quarterbacks, whether it's Dobbs, whether it's Devito. You saw that in the preseason games. I mean, how many times did Josh Dobbs either throw a ball high or throw a ball behind a receiver? I mean, Kyle Williams probably would have had 5 or 6 catches in the preseason and didn't have any because the ball couldn't get to him, right? And no fault of his own. So, look, when it comes to their backup quarterback situation, and I would argue this, how many teams in the NFL actually feel good about their backup quarterback situation? It's pretty rare. I mean, you saw a team in Minnesota a couple weeks ago in joint practices that last year had Darnold and McCarthy before McCarthy got hurt. They probably felt good then, but it's pretty rare for a team to actually feel good about their backup situation. But if you're the Patriots, there's a real gap there between May and Dobbs, and if it were to be DeVito, May and DeVito. And this is an offense too, and I know I'm stating the obvious here, but this is an offense that even more than others, they're going to need the quarterback to play well, right? We're not talking about all pros on the offensive line. We're not talking about great receivers. We're not, and look, I like Travion Henderson a lot. Hopefully Stevenson can have a bounce back year. I think that's a good group, and I think Hunter Henry is a good player, but that we're not talking about the Detroit Lions or Philadelphia Eagles supporting cast here, guys. So they're going to need the quarterback to play well if they're going to be successful, and I don't see DeVito doing that. I don't see Dobbs doing that. I mean, maybe if Drake May had to miss 4 games, could you go 1-3 with Josh Dobbs? Maybe 1-3 with DeVito. Maybe. I mean, a better backup quarterback. Could you go 2-2 perhaps? But I just don't see a lot of options out there. I mean, after that preseason game, I was hoping the Giants would cut Jameis Winston because that would have been my first choice, but they were smart enough to keep him around and cut DeVito. So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't see them having any success if Drake May gets hurt. And a lot of it has to do with Drake May, I think, has shown promise this camp, but also the supporting cast around him is just not built to support a quarterback that's not playing well.
Look, I'm really excited. I'm really excited that Tommy DeVito's on the team. I'm excited about this. I think Sean Stellato is great, and that he's from Salem. And
it is a fun story.
It's fun, and I think this is the most fun backup quarterback situation the Patriots have had, besides Bailey Zappi singing Stacey's mom. So I am excited about it. And the Patriots win total for this season set at 8.5. Over or under? Jon Lyons, what do you say? Will they win over 8.5 games or under?
Yeah, I'm at 9 right now, so I'll give you the over on that. And my reasoning is, we're talking about a team that's won 8 games combined in the last 2 years, right? It's been pretty rough. Oof. But if you go back and look, a couple of years ago, they lost 13 games. I think 8 of them were one-possession losses. Even last year, as bad as things were, we're talking a loss in overtime to Seattle, a one-possession loss to Miami. Like, they were in a lot of these games, especially 2 years ago, and I expect their defense to play much closer to the way it did 2 years ago than last year. So I think their defense will be better. I think their offense, I think Drake May is going to be better. I think their supporting cast on offense, again, not great, as I mentioned before, but it is better than last year. And if you combine that with the schedule they have, I think you'll see some opportunities. Like, I don't expect them to lose to Tennessee in overtime again like they did a year ago. I think they're better than Cleveland. I think they're better than Carolina. I think, they'll probably split with the Jets and Dolphins. I mean, that right there is 5 wins. I'm not telling you guys they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. They're a long way from that. But again, I see 9 wins here, and it goes along with the roster is better. I expect the defense to play better. And a lot of those stupid things they've done the last couple of years where they've lost games on the margins, whether it's missed field goals or penalties or missed blocks or whatever, I don't expect a lot of that to happen with Mike Vrabel. Now, some of it will, because they are a young team and they don't have a ton of depth. But I don't expect them to constantly make those stupid mistakes that they made, especially last year, that cost them a bunch of games. So to answer your question, I'm at 9 right now. I'd bet the over. I think it's the schedule. I think it's the rosters a little bit better. And I think you can't overstate the improvement they're going to have in the coaching staff as well.
Sticking with defense for a second, or actually for our last question, Bradyn Swinson, who was considered a 5th-round steal, not making the 53-man roster, but now having the ability to be on the practice squad. Do you think that he can kind of get a little bit of a second chance here? Had an inconsistent training camp, but some fans were high on his growth and him being a part of this Patriots team.
Yeah, I was a little surprised they cut him, and Ponder was better than him in camp, in fairness. But Bradyn Swinson's a guy that last year was a second-team All-SEC player, and he played more snaps last year than the previous 2 years combined. Like, this is just a guy that needs more experience, more development. I'm a little concerned that a team's going to try to claim him, and he won't make it to the Patriots practice squad. I hope he does, because that's a guy that I think if you develop him over the course of this year, and I mentioned Mike Vrabel and his coaching ability already, if you develop a guy like Swinson over the course of this year, I think he could be a real solid player for the Patriots in the future. It's just a matter of if he's able to stick around, because the ability is there. I mentioned the increased amount of snaps last year alone. I mean, he had 43 quarterback hurries last year. I mean, he was excellent when it came to rushing the passer. I think he's got to improve a little bit when it comes to his run defense, and some of that will come with development. So he's a guy definitely I would love to see stick around as a developmental piece. And for a team that has so many young guys, especially on offense, I think it would make sense for them to try to develop some of these younger defenders, because in a year or two, when some of these young offensive players are really hitting their stride and the Patriots are in a better place, you want to have some defensive players that are kind of in the same point in their career also hitting their stride. And again, I think Swinson, you were right, Casey, he was inconsistent in training camp, but I think if you look at his limited chances in college, especially last year, and the talent that's there, that's a guy that I hope they find a way to keep around.
Yep, we love to see the development of the young guys. Jon Lyons, as always, a pleasure to chat with you about all things, but today specifically being football. We'll definitely catch up with you again soon here on Boston's Under the Chat.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Well, that makes us a little bit more optimistic, or at least we have answers to some of our questions and we can die down the dramatics. I say it 100 times here on Boston's Under the Chat, not a reality TV gal, but I don't have to be, because sports just continues to keep us in all sorts of realms of drama. And we wish the best of luck to Kendrick Bourne, as you said. Good dude. And they said that the locker room response, fantastic. People love being friends with him, but that's just the business, as they say. Lucy already started bringing up some bets, but these two are going to see how well they can cook and if they can get me to buy in on their breakfast bets coming up here on Boston is Under the Chat. And if you have thoughts on bets, the Patriots or the Red Sox being red hot, call us 617-790-0928 or hashtag Nest in Chat. Don't go anywhere. Join us back here on Boston is Under the Chat on the other side of this break.